For thousands of the so-called forgotten Australians, the men and women who grew up in foster homes and institutions, often suffering from abuse at the hands of those charged with looking after them. Long-time Stateline viewers might recall the stories we brought you in 2003 and 2004 about the women who were incarcerated at the Parramatta Girls' Home and the Hay Prison for girls. Over many decades, those state-run institutions delivered a model of care to teenage girls that was harsh, brutal and often sadistic. Many of the women who had the misfortune of being sent to Parramatta and Hay, some of whom are featured in past Stateline stories, travelled to Canberra on Monday to receive the apology from the Prime Minister. Sharon O'Neill reports.
Hello. We're in a big rush today, so as soon as we get our signs in the round, we're off, okay?
For the former residents of the Parramatta Girls' Home, the day the government said sorry was a long time coming.
I've got a feeling, a surreal feeling, like who would have thought back in the 70s when we were incarcerated as children, the Prime Minister of Australia would be acknowledging our pain.
Oh, I'm pretty excited. I mean, it's been 2003 when we had the reunion here, and then we went up into Hay in 2004. So this is like another venture into our healing for all Parramatta girls, for all forgotten Australians. So, no, I'm pretty excited about that. Oh, can't run up like I used to.
Christina Green and Deborah Harris's journey to Canberra on Monday started at the site of the former girls' home, a place where teenage girls were sent by the courts because they were deemed to be uncontrollable and in moral danger. For years, many of these women kept silent about the horrors of what went on behind the walls of the girls' home. But a reunion in 2003 changed all that.
In 62 to 67, me and Irene were here. I did 4.5 years, 4 terms, because I was a state ward. I didn't have mum and dad.
I broke into a school tuck shop because my mother and father split up and I had nothing to eat.
My father
I never damaged the school, I never done anything to the school. All I'd done was feed myself.
And I never hurt anybody.
I never hurt anybody, only myself.
We were kids.
We were never asked why we ran away from home, and they kept sending us back. And what they sent us back to, so much is worse than what we found in here. And we were never, ever, ever asked why. I'm sorry.
It's all right. We were never sat in a classroom. No. We were never offered an education.
No.
When released, we weren't offered an alternative. We were sent back to the abusive place we come from.
I'm pretty hurt today when I think back to what I endured as a child, which is every child's nightmare. To be loved, to be nurtured. And all we were given was nightmares.
I don't believe that there were any girls in here that were bad. I really don't. Mischievous. No, having a lot of cheekiness in them, but not bad.
These are some of the Parramatta girls.
Hello, Parramatta girls.
Once upon a time, it was considered shameful to admit you were a Parramatta girl. But today, the Parra Girls, as they call themselves, have come to Parliament House to receive an apology from the highest office.
And, today's for you guys.
Thank you.
It's for you.
But the Prime Minister's official apology would inevitably take these women back to a deeply sinister past.
We look back with shame at how those with power were allowed to abuse those who had none. For these failures to offer proper care to the powerless, the voiceless, and the most vulnerable, we say sorry.
In 2004, some of the Parra Girls took a traumatic journey back to the former girls' prison at Hay. Girls who misbehaved at Parramatta were sent to Hay as part of a state-run experiment that failed miserably. From the station, the girls were driven by car to the jail.
it seemed like out in the middle of the nowhere. There was just wheat fields and, bare land.
When I first had a good look at the inside of the place, I thought, my God, this is terrible. It just looked like it was a derelict building that hadn't been used for years.
But if the buildings looked harsh and draconian, they were a match for the rules.
We weren't allowed to talk to one another. You weren't allowed to talk, everything was military.
The daily routine for these teenage girls was harsh and regimented, as this official standing orders document shows.
Halt! Left and right, turn! 2 paces forward, march!
If you didn't have your knees lifted up high, they'd come right up to your ear and say, lift them knees higher, Riley. And if you didn't lift them higher, they'd just grab you by the scruff of the neck and throw you into isolation. And if you went off with a little bit of a struggle, you copped a severe bashing again. And then, they were big men. We were only 15-year-old girls, and all these men at Parramatta and Hay, they were big men.
Let us resolve this day that this national apology becomes a turning point in our nation's story. A turning point for shattered lives. A turning point for governments at all levels and of every political hue and colour to do all in our power to never allow this to happen again.
I was thrilled with the apology. It's acknowledgement, and as Mr Rudd and Mr Turnbull said, that we weren't believed, and that was true with some families, some friends, co-workers. We just weren't believed, and now it's out there, and people know that all these years it wasn't just a figment of my imagination what happened.
It was a long and emotional day for the Para girls, a day that ended back at the old girls' home.
I just think it's been a tremendous step forward. In 200 years we've finally got a Prime Minister that's given us acceptance that these things did happen, and he's given us an apology. So I commend that Kevin Rudd, what he's done today, and I think his words have really spoken to each and every one of us, and I think it's been a very healing day. I think there's still a long way to go, but today's been the first step, and I think it's been an enormous step.
The next step for these women is a campaign to have the former girls' home made into a living memorial as a reminder and acknowledgement of a past that is no longer a secret.
Sharon O'Neill reporting. Delays, lots of travel.